Hey guys, so the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints today is known as a financially well-off organization, but it hasn't always been that way. There are a lot of different things we could talk about within the realm of church finance, but in this episode, we're just going to start with a bird's eye view of the church's financial status over the decades. Let's do it. All right, so the fact of the matter is that for many decades, the church's financial story is one of deep, soul-crushing debt.
On the one hand, gold. On the other hand, painful, agonizing failure.
In the 1830s, leaders attempted to resolve financial problems by organizing the Kirtland Safety Society, which we're not going to talk much about because we've already done an episode on that topic. Needless to say, the KSS failed miserably, and the situation was only worsened by the 1838 financial crisis that swept the country at the time. Fast forward to the mid-1800s. Joseph Smith is killed, the Saints are kicked out of Nauvoo, and Brigham Young leads them west to Utah Territory. Despite extreme privations and the challenges associated with rebuilding your community from the ground up, the church scraped by. But there was trouble on the horizon.
There's a storm coming, Ari. We'd all best be ready when she does.
The 1893 Depression paralyzed the church. By late June, cash donations had almost ceased. On July 1st, the church failed to meet its payroll. Appropriations for church education were halted. 20 schools were closed, and the opening of the new church university in Salt Lake City was postponed indefinitely. Clerks struggled to pay even the low-priced fares of returning missionaries, and sometimes failed. Everyday urgent demands for cash are made of us, which we cannot meet, wrote the first presidency, for the simple reason that we have no money. We never saw such a time of financial stringency as there is now. Desperate, the church sent a representative to New York to look for loans. Quite miraculously, that representative was successful and brought the church back from the brink, and I mean the brink, of financial ruin. That man's name was Heber J. Grant. But the church's financial struggles were not over. Multiple contributing factors, such as a series of bad investments and the confiscation of church property under the Edmunds-Tucker Acts, meant that the church debt by 1899 had skyrocketed to between $1 and $2 million, undermining the entire financial structure of the church. The church's main source of support, as is the case today, was tithing funds. One scholar estimated that between 1890 and 1898, an average of only 15.9% of Latter-day Saints were paying at least some tithing. In 1899, then President Lorenzo Snow hit the subject of tithing hard, raising the percentage for that year to 25.6%. And by 1907, President Joseph F. Smith was finally able to announce that the church was officially out of debt. But while getting out of debt was obviously a huge step, the church wasn't out of the ringer yet. Soon the dark cloud of the Great Depression loomed over Utah, as it did the rest of the country. In 1932, unemployment in Utah reached 35.9%, and per capita income fell by 48.6%. Despite deficit spending in the late 1930s, the church made it through the Great Depression, and J. Reuben Clark set out to build a stronger reserve fund. Regarding the church's financial decisions, President Clark said in the April 1940 General Conference, "We, the authorities of the church, must be extremely careful as to our commitments. We are not infallible in our judgment, and we err, but our constant prayer is that the Lord will guide us in our decisions." The detailed financial report the church had been accustomed to presenting annually at General Conference ended after 1959 in the wake of more deficit spending, largely on building projects. By the early 1960s, whatever reserve the church had built up was gone, much to the chagrin of some leaders like Harold B. Lee. And then in 1962, N. Eldon Tanner was called to the Quorum of the 12 and to the first presidency just a year later. President Tanner took the scattered budget of the church and brought it into correlation. His strong influence in implementing a more exacting corporate finance model to church headquarters during his tenure cannot be overstated. N. Eldon Tanner rescued the church from a cash flow crisis in 1963. Within 2 decades, he established LDS headquarters as a financial powerhouse, with significant annual income from both its investments and businesses. Now, when it comes to church finances, people have strong opinions. Some people are elated with the church's success and substantial financial reserves. Others feel the church should be doing more with the money they have or should be managing things differently. When it comes to money, there will always be opposing opinions, and everyone is entitled to those opinions. I try not to be dogmatic in my views simply because I don't have the full picture of the church's financial assets and obligations. Can those in financial leadership make bad decisions? Yes, Reuben J. Clark was clear on that. Do I think I could do any better?
Probably not.
Not a chance. And just to offer some perspective, as we look at the arc of the church's financial situation over the decades, success is relatively recent. Late church presidents Thomas S. Monson and Gordon B. Hinckley were both in the Quorum of the 12 in 1963, just as the church was struggling to avoid the worst financial crisis of its history. The current president, Russell M. Nelson, was born in 1924. In institutional memory, hard financial times weren't all that long ago. Perhaps that perspective provides some context for the policies currently in place. Now, this episode has been quite broad and admittedly simplified, but there's still a lot to talk about. For example, people have lots of questions about the business and investment side of church finances, which we'll talk about in the next episode. In the meantime, check out the links in the YouTube description, watch some of our other videos while you're here, and have a great day.